Let's bring in former CIA caseworker, Democratic Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger of Virginia. She sits on that committee that you saw there and joins us now. Congresswoman, good morning. Did we get any answers yesterday? You were there in the hearing. I know you had questions. We'll get into that. There was obviously a lot of grandstanding, more lectures than questions than what we saw right there. Did you get any satisfactory answers yesterday from the Secretary?
So yesterday for me was the start of the conversation. I think what you depicted in the part where the clips we just saw was a lot of the grandstanding, frankly, not an effort to get answers, just media clips. But we did have, from Democrats and Republicans, thoughtful, detailed questions. You know, and frankly, we're looking at what's happened within the past 6 weeks, what's happened since the beginning of the year when the administration came into the presidency, and we've been looking at the last 20 years. So yesterday was, I think, a first step forward in what I hope will be many more hearings as we conduct congressional oversight. Certainly, one day's conversation about our 20-year war and the challenging departure from Afghanistan will certainly not be sufficient.
Your district is home to Fort Pickett, which currently houses about 5,000, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, 5,000 Afghan men, women, and children who are evacuated from that country. How many more people do you sense are still in Afghanistan who would like to come out and arrive somewhere like Fort Pickett? We know there are a handful of Americans left. We need to get a better number on that. But also Afghans, wartime allies, people who worked with us, or people, frankly, just scared to live alongside the Taliban?
Well, so throughout the world, we still have individuals at different lily pad locations who are waiting to go through the process to file for their SIV or confirm their SIV paperwork or their P2 eligibility. From their perspective, ideally move on to the United States. There's also endangered Afghans who made it out of the country who are potentially going to be processed for relocation in other countries, not just the United States. Certainly other allies throughout the world have offered to take endangered Afghans. And I do know that there continue to be folks on the ground in Afghanistan who worked in concert with, right side by side with American service members and American organizations, NGOs, and they continue, some of them continue to be in very, very grave danger.
Congresswoman, I listened to your questioning yesterday, and you asked the Secretary specifically about videos that you've seen and received, testimony that you've seen and received about the condition of certain women in Afghanistan, women who might have been singled out for assassination and discrimination, etc. How much leverage do you think the U.S. still has practically, and how much political capital is it prepared to expend in order to try and ensure that women's rights are protected in Afghanistan? Because, frankly, the early signs aren't good, right? Women are being told they have to stay home, they can't work alongside men, they can't get into taxis with men, and some are being treated far worse than that. So what do you think the U.S. can do and is prepared to do now?
So I think this is a bit of a moving target. I think, and this was the crux of my question, I was concerned by some of the testimony of the Secretary and others from the administration that are still kind of giving the benefit of the doubt to the Taliban. And my question really was based on, is it appropriate to still give them the benefit of the doubt? And if not, how do we move forward? How do we advocate for the rights of women in Afghanistan? How do we protect those who entered schools and entered university and set about being part of their government because we were there as a stabilizing factor and advocating for them to do that? And so I think at this point in time, it will be incumbent upon the United States to work diligently with our partner nations, both with our NATO allies and regional partners, to continue that advocacy. But I think first and foremost, we have to be eyes wide open about the reality on the ground, which is why I asked the Secretary if he has seen these disturbing videos and photos and accounts of what's happening in Afghanistan currently.
Congresswoman, I want to talk about a couple things. But first, I want to discuss the insults, the shouting, those petulantly insulting him, saying everything he said was a lie, and then petulantly demanding that the Secretary of State not respond. just shocked at the lack of decorum, the lack of respect for the institution of Congress, the lack of respect for the institution of the state. And instead of getting to the facts, you had a lot of people that were just sort of verbally prancing around and posing for the cameras. I'm just shocked. Does that happen a lot in your committees? Because I can tell you, we impeached Bill Clinton. We nailed his people to the wall rhetorically, but we always were respectful of the Armed Services Committee. Our chairman demanded it of us.
The challenge here is some of the antics that you saw yesterday in the Blinken hearing are part and parcel of, there's a few folks on that committee. They're there for the antics. I have children, as you see in this picture, and sometimes you just have to, I could go back home if I wanted to listen to someone being a petulant child. Although my children, let's be clear, do not behave like that. It's preening for the camera. It's not respecting the constitutional duty of oversight. If we're supposed to be asking questions, and there's in fact a assertion that you don't even want to hear an answer, then it's a 5-minute speech. You can do that elsewhere. The secretary's time is valuable. Our time is valuable, and the American people's time is valuable. And we want answers. There are many questions that I still need answered from this secretary, from this administration. And frankly, because it's about looking backwards, what happened in the past, it's also about helping to ensure that we're moving forward. I will say one of the most spectacular questions that we heard during the hearing came from my colleague, Congressman Castro of Texas, who remarked on the fact that in the 9/11 Commission review, that one of the findings was that there were so many State Department officials who were not in confirmed positions. So many Bush administration officials hadn't actually received Senate confirmation. And Congressman Castro's comment was like, this was a learning of something that went wrong back in 2001. And here we are with about half of the numbers of confirmed State Department officials compared to where we were in 2001, because we have one senator who's standing in the way of confirmation of these an array of undersecretaries who are vital to being able to move forward on the mission related to things that Kathy was talking about, such as ensuring that we can work with our regional partners to advocate for women and girls, ensuring that the departments handling Afghanistan and our regional equities are well staffed. And so these are the sorts of things that we're supposed to bring forward in these hearings. And some people did it very, very effectively. And some people were there just for the clicks and the celebrity of it, which is not the job. That is not the duty.
No, it's not the duty at all. And it's disrespectful of the institution of Congress and everybody else involved. Gene Robinson has a question. Gene.
Congresswoman, what did you, despite all the preening and all the showboating that you heard from the other side of the aisle, did you? I know you don't think you got enough, but did you get a start from Secretary Blinken? And do you understand better the Biden administration's policy and the way the withdrawal was handled, or is that still somehow opaque to you?
No, I think that across the conversation, and frankly, some of, on both sides of the aisle, some people asked some very, very good foundational questions. And so I think that we were able to get very good foundational questions. That's a strong point moving forward. Some of the historical analysis and assessments of, okay, when the administration came in January, what were you moving forward with? You had a deal. Did you have a plan from the prior administration? Sort of what were the inputs that they were dealing with? So I did think it was a very good starting point. The secretary, I think, answered the questions in detail, and even if you didn't like the answers to the questions that he gave, I think he gave very good detailed answers. and certainly gave us some kind of initial steps forward that have caused a lot of us to have some follow up. I'm pleased, particularly in my district. I represent Fort Pickett, where there are currently about 5,000 evacuees, could be up to 10,000. There's some particular questions that I have had. I've engaged directly with the administration, and to be able to speak of those evacuations, those evacuees in my district directly with the secretary. He gave good initial answers, and in some of the cases he said, "We don't know yet. I'll have to get back to you." So I think that signals that this really does need to be a continued conversation, because frankly, it is still an evolving process. So for those of us who are particularly focused on looking forward, the conversation continues. And the further we get into the future, I think a little bit more clarity we'll have looking back on what went right, what went wrong, and how we mitigated risks or how we could have done better, or frankly, a greater clarity about the situation that this administration had taken over. In fairness, clarity about the situation that the prior administration had taken over, and clarity about the situation that the administration before that had taken over, right? There's 20 years worth of decisions and pivot points, and that will be a longer process. But I thought yesterday was a very good first beginning. I'll be tuning into portions of the Senate hearing, which I hope will be additive to what we began yesterday. And from there, we should continue the process of oversight, which is our constitutional duty, and something that is so vitally important.
Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger, thank you very much for coming on this morning, and thanks for everything you do.